Assalamu alaikum. How are you? Today we will start another unit of O-Level Physics 5054, that is unit number 3, Dynamics. Already you have studied unit number 2, Kinematics. Both dynamics and kinematics are the branches of mechanics, and mechanics is the branch of physics. In mechanics we study the motion of the bodies. So what is difference between kinematics and dynamics? There is one basic difference between kinematics and dynamics. In kinematics we study the motions of the body without reference of forces, but in dynamics we also study the motions of the body but with reference of forces. So this is the basic difference between kinematics and dynamics. So let's proceed to our first learning outcome of the unit number 3, that is dynamics, and the first learning outcome is the statement of Newton's third law of motion. There are two statements of Newton's third law of motion. Number 1, for every action there is equal but opposite reaction. For every action there is equal but opposite reaction. Or statement number 2, or it can be written as well like this: action and reaction are equal in magnitude but opposite in direction. So in either ways we can write the statement of Newton's third law of motion. For every action there is equal but opposite reaction, or action and reaction are equal in magnitude but opposite in direction. In order to understand the concept of Newton's third law of motion, we will consider a simple example of a tennis ball. Right now tennis ball is in my hand. Now just look and observe what is going to be happen. What I am doing, I am just hitting the ball with the earth and ball bounces back. So in order to understand the concept of Newton's third law of motion, now we will look at this example. As soon I am going to release the ball, it is moving towards the earth. As soon it touches the earth, it applies the force on the earth, which is called as action. So definitely it will be its weight. So it was exerting the force in downward direction, vertically downward, and when it hits with the earth applies an equal but opposite force on the ball in upward direction. So this is the reason when I am going to release the ball, hits with the earth, it bounces back. So the force exerted by the ball on the earth is called as action, and the force exerted by the earth on the ball is called as reaction. So these two forces are equal in magnitude but opposite in direction. Why these two forces are not going to be cancel each other if they are equal in magnitude but opposite in direction? Because Newton's third law of motion is applied or applicable on two different bodies. We will assume the ball as body A and the earth as body B. So this is the reason these two forces are not going to be cancel each other. So I am going to draw the diagram over here as well. This is the earth, and obviously I will consider it as a body B. This is the ball, I am going to consider it as a body A. So when this ball hits the earth, what will happen? It will exert a force on earth in downward reaction, which is in downward direction, which is its weight. As a result, earth will also exert a force on the ball in upward direction, which is called as reaction. So weight was the force being exerted by the ball on the earth was its action, while the force which was applied by the earth on the ball in upward direction was reaction. Another example from daily life regarding the Newton's third law of motion is that if I am going to hang some weights with the thread, definitely the weight of the bodies is acting in downward direction. This will be called as action, and as a result there will be an opposite force acting on the string in upward direction, that is called as tension. So the value of weight being applied in downward direction is action, and the value of force exerted on the string in upward direction is tension, is called as reaction. So these two forces are also equal in magnitude but opposite in direction. So its weight is being acting in downward direction is called as action, and the force acting on the string in upward direction, that is tension, is called as reaction. So this is called as action, and this force, this upward force, is called as reaction. Another example from daily life, that if we are going to place the book on the surface of the table, then again two forces are acting on the book. Number one, its weight is acting in downward direction. Obviously it is being acting on the surface of the table, that is called as action, and as a result table will exert an upward force on the book, vertically upward, exactly opposite to the weight, that is called as reaction. So that force which is acting in upward direction is called as reactionary force. So weight of the book acting on the table is called as action, and the force being exerted by the table on the book in upward direction is called as reaction. Another example from daily life is that, have you ever observed that when birds are going to fly, then how they are going to fly? They are moving their wings like this. So what is going to be happening? They are exerting the force on the air by their wings in downward direction. As a result, air exerts the force on their wings in upward direction, so they are being lifted upward. So birds fly like this. The force exerted by the wings on the air in downward direction is actionary force. As a result, the force exerted by the air on the wings in upward direction is reactionary force. Another example from daily life is that when we walk on the earth, so we pushes the earth in backward direction, that is called as action, and as a reaction earth pushes us in the forward direction, that is reaction. And another example from daily life, in order to understand the Newton's third law of motion, that when we are boating in a river by using a boat, what we are going to do? We are pushing the water with the oars in backward direction. So that is called as actionary force. As a result, water exerts a force in forward direction and our boat moves. So I hope that now you will be able to understand the concept of actionary and reactionary force. And which topic was this? Newton's third law of motion. What was its statement? For every action there is equal but opposite reaction, or action and reaction are equal in magnitude but opposite in direction. So let's proceed towards next learning outcome. Now we will start the next learning outcome of this unit, and that is describe the effect of balanced and unbalanced forces on a body. Now we will see that how balanced and unbalanced forces acts on a body. So the first thing that we will discuss, that what are balanced forces. Okay ji, for balanced forces, what does it mean? Let's suppose if there is a body, two forces are acting on this body, 20 Newton on right side and 20 Newton on left side. So how many forces are acting on this body? Two. 20 Newton on left side, 20 Newton on right side. So what will be the net force or total force? That will be definitely 20 minus 20 is equals to 0. It's mean the forces are balanced, or it can be considered as well. Let's suppose if there is a string and a weight of 40 Newton is acting on it in downward direction, then definitely tension acting on the string in upward direction will be also equals to 40 Newton. Now, are these forces are balanced? Yes, these forces are also balanced forces. So in balanced forces, net force will be always equals to 0. For balanced forces, there are two possibilities. Number one, the body might be in the state of equilibrium or rest. The body might be in the state of equilibrium or rest. And number two, there is another possibility that body is moving with uniform velocity or terminal velocity. These are the two possibilities when forces are balanced. So when forces are balanced, what will happen? Body will be in the state of rest or in equilibrium, or body will move with uniform velocity or with terminal velocity. And in this case, we have already studied in previous unit that when body moves with uniform velocity or terminal velocity, acceleration will be always equals to 0. If body is at rest, let's suppose mass of the body was 10 kg, body was at rest, definitely acceleration will be equals to 0. Then what will be the value of force? Value of force will be equals to 10 into 0. That is, no force was acting on the body and body was in the state of rest. So what should we keep in our mind for the balanced forces? That net force will be equals to 0, due to which body will be in the state of rest or in equilibrium, or body will move with uniform velocity or with terminal velocity. And in that case, if body is moving with terminal velocity, acceleration will be equals to 0. अभी तो मैं जवान हूँ, अभी तो मैं जवान हूँ. Okay. Camera, action, light, cut. So the concept of balanced forces is now clear to all of you. Now we will proceed towards another concept of unbalanced forces. Let's suppose if I am going to consider the example of the block on which again two forces were acting, 40 Newton towards right side and 20 Newton towards left side. Now what do you think, that whether these forces are balanced forces as we have studied the previous topic? No, these forces cannot be balanced forces. What is the reason? Because forces are in opposite direction but not equal in magnitude. So if I am going to consider this force as F2 and this force as F1, so then definitely net force or total force will be equals to F2 minus F1, that is equals to 40 minus 20 is equals to 20 Newton. So net force, or we can also write it as resultant force as well. So net force or resultant force acting on the body is 20 Newton, and we will draw the net force or resultant force acting on the body towards which side. So larger force was acting on right side, so definitely body will move in right side direction. So we will draw the double arrow in order to show the resultant force acting on the body towards right side. What was happening in the case of balanced forces? If body was moving, then it was moving with terminal velocity and uniform velocity, and acceleration was zero because net force was zero. But in case of unbalanced forces, definitely acceleration will produce in the body in the direction of force. So in this case, acceleration will produce in bodies, acceleration will produce in body in direction of force, in direction of force, or you can say in the direction of net force or resultant force or total force. Another example of unbalanced forces is the example of a car. Let's suppose I am going to draw the diagram of a car. So this is the latest model. The car is moving on the surface of earth. Let's suppose it is moving in this direction, so definitely capital F will be engine's force, as car is moving towards right side, so two forces will act on the car in opposite direction of motion. Number one, F air, and number two, F. F airs mean air resistance. F airs mean air resistance. F means force of friction between tires and road. So now how many total forces are acting on the body? Three forces: engine's force, air resistance in opposite direction, as well as frictional force between the tire and the road in opposite direction as well. So two cases are here. If forces are balanced, for balanced forces, what will happen? F is equals to F air plus F. In other words, body will move with uniform velocity or terminal velocity, and acceleration will be equals to 0. So for balanced forces, acceleration will be equals to 0 because body is moving with terminal velocity. For unbalanced forces, what will happen? Definitely for unbalanced forces, capital F, engine thrust, will be greater than F air plus F. Now what will happen? Acceleration will produce or not? Yes. If forces are unbalanced, acceleration will produce. So therefore, acceleration will produce. So in this way we have studied the difference between balanced and unbalanced forces. So I am just going to review it, that in balanced forces, no resultant force, no net force is acting on the body. The body will be in the state of rest or equilibrium, or if body is moving, then body will move with terminal velocity or uniform velocity, and acceleration will be equals to 0. For unbalanced forces, there will be definitely a net force or resultant force or total force acting on the body, and acceleration will produce in the direction of force. The next learning outcome of this unit is very interesting, that we have to discuss the ways by which a force can change the motion of the body. What does it mean? That how we can change the motion of the bodies, and we have to discuss those ways or those methods. I will consider example from daily life, and that is the example of a car. In order to move the car, definitely first of all we have to switch on its engine, applying the gear, and now in order to move the car, what we will do? What will be our next step? We will definitely press the accelerator. As soon we are going to press the accelerator, car will start moving. Larger the pressing force being applied on the accelerator, larger will it attain the speed. In other words, its motion changes by applying the accelerator. So when accelerator is being pressed, what is happening? Acceleration is being produced in the car in the direction of force. Now if car is moving and we want to again change its motion, what we will do? Definitely we will apply the brakes. When we will apply the brakes, what will happen? Its speed increases or decreases? Definitely its speed decreases, because when we apply the brakes, frictional force is being applied in opposite direction. So again its motion changes. So when we apply the brakes, what is being produced in the car? Deceleration. So there are two ways or the two methods by which we can change the motion of the body. Number one, by applying or by pressing the accelerator, and number two, by applying or by pressing the brake pedals. Now we will discuss next learning outcome of this unit. Now we are proceeding to our next learning outcome of this unit, and that is learning outcome C. Equation is written over here, F is equals to ma, and this belongs to Newton's second law of motion. So this equation gives us the relation between F stands for force, M stands for mass, and A stands for acceleration. So this relation gives us the force in terms of mass and acceleration. From here we can conclude that A is equals to F over m. This gives us two sorts of relations. Acceleration is proportional to force and acceleration is inversely proportional to mass. So what does it mean? That larger the value of the force, larger the value of the acceleration, smaller the value of the force, smaller will be the acceleration. So it's mean when force increases, acceleration in the body also increases. When force decreases, acceleration in the body also decreases. But there is an inverse relation between acceleration and mass of the body. If mass of the body increases, obviously it will be a heavier body, then its acceleration decreases. And if lighter body is there, if mass decreases, then obviously acceleration increases. So this is called as Newton's second law of motion, F is equals to ma. We will solve one example. Let's suppose mass of the body is equals to 1500 kg. Body was, or you might say, velocity of the body changes from 10 meters per second to 25 meters per second in 5 seconds. So we have to find the value of force. What was the formula of force if mass and acceleration are given? F is equals to ma. So I will write over here F is equals to ma. Value of mass is given, but where is the value of acceleration? So we will use the concept of acceleration from chapter number 2 or unit number 2 kinematics. That what was the definition of acceleration? Rate of change of velocity. So we will calculate the change in velocity per unit time, that is mass is equals to 1500. And how we can calculate the value of acceleration? What was initial velocity? 10. What was final velocity? 25. In how much time? 5 seconds. So 25 minus 10 over 5. 25 minus 10, definitely it will be equals to 15 over 5. When we will solve this, 3 will be here. So 1500 into 3, that is equals to 4500. So how much force was exerting on the body of mass 1500 kg, whose velocity was supposed to be changed from 10 meter per second to 25 meter per second in 5 seconds, is 4500 Newton. So Newton's second law of motion is clear to all of you. Now we will proceed to our next learning outcome. So the next learning outcome of this unit is friction is a force which impedes motion and produces heating. Impedes mean prevents, or you might say in simple words, opposes. Okay, so how we can prove that friction is a force? There is a very simple activity with which we can prove that friction is a force. Just start rubbing your both hands. Now you can feel that your hands are going to be warmer as you are going to rub your both hands with each other. So what is happening? Actually, when we are going to rub one hand with the other hand, friction is being produced, due to which heat is being produced. Friction plays a very vital role in our daily life. Number one, without friction, we cannot walk. If there will be no friction, it is not possible for us to walk. The example is very simple from daily life, that if there is a slippery road or there is a oil on the road, then we cannot walk. We will slip down. But opposite to it, friction stops us as well. If we are running, we have to stop ourselves, then it frictions in contact between our shoe and earth, which stops us. Again, if there will be no friction, then we will be slipped. We cannot stop ourselves. So friction produces heat and it prevents motion. How it prevents motion? Let's suppose if we are going to roll a ball on the surface of earth. Now as soon we are going to push the ball or roll the ball on the surface of earth, it will cover some distance, and after covering some particular distance, it comes in the state of rest. Why it comes in the state of rest? It is due to friction. Friction always acts in the opposite direction of the motion. Let's suppose if body was moving in this direction, then friction will act in opposite direction. And in order to apply the friction in the bodies, the two bodies should be in contact with each other. The tire is in contact with the earth. So when two bodies are in motion and they are in contact with each other, then definitely friction will produce, and friction opposes the motion. Okay, another example from daily life is that whenever we are using the tires of the car, what happens? After a particular time, due to the friction or due to the frictional force, the tires wear out. They are going to be flatter. If there will be no friction, there will be no grip, and we will be not able to stop the car. If there will be no friction, we will not be able to move the car or start the car from its initial point to its final point. So friction has advantages as well as disadvantages. Now we will discuss another learning outcome of this unit, and that learning outcome is also related to frictional forces. Before discussing next learning outcome of this unit, kindly make one correction in your notes. While I was discussing Newton's second law of motion, that is F is equal to ma, and the topic of friction, by mistakenly I have mentioned learning outcome C in front of F is equals to ma and learning outcome D in front of topic of friction, while actually F is equal to ma belongs to learning outcome D and learning outcome E was mentioned in front of topic of friction. So make this little bit correction in your notes. So now we will discuss next learning outcome, that is F, effect of friction on motion of vehicle. That how friction affects the motion of vehicle under different conditions. Number 1, tire surface. Number 2, road conditions. Number 3, braking force. Number 4, what is meant by thinking distance, what is meant by braking distance, and then last one, what is meant by stopping distance. So let's proceed and discuss the effect of friction on motion of vehicles on the discussed parameters one by one. The first parameter on which friction affects the motion of vehicle is the surface of the tire. Now I will show you the two surfaces of the tires. Number 1, can you see the proper design on the surface of the tire? These are the proper designs, threads on the surface of the tire. While I am going to move the tire now in this direction, now can you see the worn out part of the tire? Can you see it clearly? The worn out side of the tire. So this tire has two different sides. Number 1, worn out side, and number 2, having proper design or treats. So now we will discuss that how these two type of tires are being affected by the friction while car or vehicle is in motion. So the number one, tire surface. If tire is new one, having proper design or proper treats, then definitely it has more friction. What does it mean? If tire is new one, having proper design, having proper treats on its surface, then it has a stronger grip with the surface of earth. More the friction, more it will be easy for us to move the car, and more it will be easy to us to stop the car. Already we have studied that friction is helpful while moving and friction is helpful while stopping. So while driving the car with new tires, it will be very easy for us to pick up the speed without any problem, as well as when we are going to apply the brakes, then we can stop the car with the proper grip and in lesser time. On the opposite of it, if we are using old tires or worn out tires, if we are using old tires or worn out tires, then there will be less friction. How tires worn out? Already we have discussed that thing, that when there is a motion, then definitely friction is being produced between the surface of earth and the tire. And which effect is being produced? Heating effect. This heating effect melts the rubber of the tire and gradually tires worn out. So for worn out tires, there will be less friction, and definitely if friction will be less, then it will be difficult for us to stop the car. While moving the car or stopping the car, we have more friction. If friction will be more, it will be very easy for us to move the car or to stop the car. But if there will be less friction, then it will be difficult for us to move the car or to stop the car. So in this way, surface of tire affects the motion of vehicle depending on its value of friction. The second parameter is road condition. Now we will consider two types of roads. Road conditions. We will consider two types of roads. Number one, dry road, and number two, wet surface or wet road. Obviously, dry road has more friction while tire and surface of earth are in contact, and wet road has less friction while surface of earth and tire are in contact. So dry road has more friction while wet road has less friction. Why wet road has less friction? Because liquid reduces the friction. While roads are wet, there is definitely a layer of water between the surface of tire and surface of earth. So that layer of water reduces the value of friction. So how friction is being affected by the road conditions? Definitely, if we are moving the car on the dry road, then the tire and the surface of earth has more friction and car has more grip with the surface of earth. So it will be very easy for us to move the car or to stop the car if we are driving the car on dry road. So there will be more friction on the dry road. While if we are driving the car on the wet surface or wet road, what happens? Have you ever observed in your daily life that if there is some sort of raining and we are going to apply the brakes during that raining part or raining season, then we have to apply the brakes for a larger time as compared to the driving on the dry road. What is the reason? That wet surfaces has less friction and dry surfaces has more friction. So how road condition affects the motion of the body, that for dry roads larger friction is there, it will be easy for us to stop the car or to move the car, while on wet roads lesser friction is there and it will be difficult to stop the car or to move the car. Now what is the third point? Third point is braking force. It's a simple phenomena. The force which is being applied to press the brakes till car stops, then that force is called as braking force. The next point is thinking distance. Thinking distance. Distance covered before applying brakes is called as thinking distance. Distance covered before applying brakes is called as thinking distance. So now let me explain this. If we are driving a car and we are moving straight on the road, then suddenly we have observed that some sort of other vehicle is just crossing the road, or some sort of person is being passing the road. Then we have start thinking that whether we have to apply the brakes or not. Till we will reach there, then the person will cross the road or not. Now while we are thinking, the car is continuously covering the distance. Still we haven't applied the brakes, but still car is covering the distance towards that person or the body which is supposed to cross the road. So that sort of distance is called as thinking distance. The distance covered by the body or covered by the car before applying the brakes. That distance is called as thinking distance. In other words, if we are sitting in the car and just we are thinking that can we apply the brakes or the person will move or person will cross, then that distance is called as thinking distance. The next one is braking distance. Distance covered after applying brakes till it comes in state of rest. Now we have reacted, that we have decided that it's the time to apply the brakes, because if we will not apply the brakes, then might be possible accident can occur. So we have pressed the brake pedal. Even then car is covering distance. Have you ever observed that when we are going to apply the brakes, then still car is covering the distance till it comes in the state of rest? So that distance, which distance? The distance which is being covered after applying the brakes, after our reaction, that now we have to apply the brakes, otherwise accident will occur. So that distance is called as braking distance. So what is difference between thinking distance and braking distance? Thinking distance was the distance before applying the brakes, and the braking distance was the distance which was being covered after applying the brakes till car comes in the state of rest. And what is stopping distance? It's very simple. Stopping distance is the sum of thinking distance plus braking distance. So if we know the values of both thinking distance and braking distance, then we can find easily the value of stopping distance. Now we will discuss another aspect or another part of this learning outcome, that how tires surface and road condition affects the thinking distance and braking distance. Definitely if we are considering tire surface, then we will consider two type of tires. New tire, it's mean having proper treat. Old tires mean worn out tire. So we will discuss that how new tire and old tire affects the thinking distance and braking distance. So thinking distance, point A, thinking distance, and point B, braking distance. Okay, so if tires are new or tires are old, then will it affect the thinking distance? No. Or definitely thinking distance is not being affected by the conditions of tire, because we have to think either we are driving the car with old tires or we are driving the car with new tires. We have to think with the brain, not with the tires. So thinking distance is being not affected by the surface of tire or type of tire, but definitely braking distance is being affected by the surface of tire or type of tire. If tires are new, definitely they have more friction. More frictions mean more grip, and more grips mean that when we apply the brakes, then car will come in the state of rest in a very little time or by covering less distance. So thinking distance is not being affected by the both of the tires, either new or old. Yes, braking distance will be affected by the both types of the tire. If new tire is there, I will write over here new and old. So if new tire will be there, braking distance decreases, and if old tire is there, braking distance increases. What is the reason? Why braking distance increases if old tire is being used? Definitely old tire has less friction and it will cover more distance in order to stop the car. So in this way, surface of tire affects the braking distance, not the thinking distance. Now we will consider the effect of road conditions on both thinking distance and braking distance. Dry roads mean more friction. Wet roads mean less friction. Here I will write the column dry and rather I will write over here A, thinking distance, B, braking distance, and now I will make the column over here dry, wet. So whether thinking distance is being affected by the dry road or wet road? No. Thinking distance will again not affected by the either dry road or wet road, because we have to think that whether we have to apply the brakes or not. So thinking distance will be not affected by the dry road as well as wet road. Yes, braking distance will be affected both by the dry road and wet road. In case of dry road, there will be more friction, more grip, and it will taken less time to stop the car. So definitely braking distance will reduce. While if road is wet, there will be less friction and it will take more time to stop the car. Definitely if it will take more time, it will cover more distance. So what we can write over here, that braking distance decreases if road is dry and braking distance will increase if road is wet. Yes, thinking distance definitely is being affected by one factor, that is if driver has taken some sort of alcohol, then definitely he will be like that. Then in that case thinking distance will be definitely affected. So I hope that this learning outcome is now clear to all of you, that how we can calculate the thinking distance, braking distance, stopping distance, under which condition thinking distance changes, under which condition braking distance increases. Now we will discuss the last two learning outcomes of this unit, and these two learning outcomes belongs to circular motion. I have attached a small mesh with thread. Now I am moving that thread in this way. So what kind of motion is this? This is the circular motion. Another example of circular motion from daily life is the motion of the earth around the sun, is called as circular motion. Another example of circular motion is the motion of electrons revolving in orbits around the nucleus, is called as circular motion. So let's see that what kind of parameters are being involved in circular motion, or how circular motion happened. If body is moving in a straight line, then force acting on the body is simple. a force. If body is moving in a circular path, then that force is called as centripetal force. And that is represented by Fc. Although it is not the part of the syllabus, but as a physics guys, you must keep this thing in your mind that if body is moving in a circular path, then the force acting on the body is called as centripetal force. Now what happens during centripetal force? During centripetal force, if this is the direction of motion of the body, then the force which is acting perpendicularly to the direction of motion of the body acting towards the center of the circle is called as centripetal force. The force which is acting perpendicularly to the direction of motion of the body acting towards the center of the circle is called as centripetal force. Okay, if direction of motion of the body is like this or in this direction, then definitely it will act perpendicularly to the center of the circle. If body is at this point, then again the force which is acting perpendicularly to the direction of motion of the body, and it will be always directed towards the center of the circle. And if we are considering this sort of motion or motion at this point, then again the force which is acting towards the center of the circle is called as centripetal force. So all these forces compels the body to move in a circular path. So following are the points which you should keep in your mind. Number one, always this force is directed towards the center of circle. Always this force is directed towards center of circle. What does it mean? Its direction will be always towards the center of the circle. Number two, there is an angle of 90 degree that is perpendicular between direction of motion and force. Direction of motion and force. So these 2 points are very important if we are considering circular motion. That in circular motion always force is acting towards the center of the circle. And number 2, there is an angle of 90 degree between the motion of the body and the force which is acting towards the center of circle. So are these 2 points are clear to you? Okay, now we will consider another interesting example of uniform speed from the topic of kinematics as well as from the topic of circular motion. In our daily life, if body is moving on a straight road with uniform speed or with uniform velocity, what will be the acceleration? Definitely uniform speed or uniform velocities mean the body is moving with terminal velocity. So what will be the acceleration in the body if it is moving along the straight road? Definitely it will be equals to 0. So acceleration will be equals to 0. Now if the same body is moving with the same speed in circular path, if the same body is moving with same speed in circular path, that is uniform speed or uniform velocity. Now what will be the value of acceleration? Will acceleration produce or not? Yes, acceleration will produce if the body is moving with uniform speed in circular path. How acceleration will produce? Now we will see. Velocity changes if magnitude of speed changes, if magnitude of speed changes, or velocity changes if direction of motion changes. Direction of motion changes. So in this case, if we are considering these two parameters, speed is not going to be changed. But in circular path, at every instant, direction of motion changes. So definitely when direction of motion changes at every instant, then its velocity changes. And we know that. What was the definition of acceleration which was being studied in kinematics unit 2? Acceleration was rate of change of velocity. So if velocity changes, and why velocity changes? Because the direction of motion of the body changes when it is moving in a circular path at every instant. So when velocity changes, then definitely acceleration is being produced. So now is the difference between these two statement is clear, that if body is moving on a straight road with uniform speed, there will be no acceleration. But if the body is moving with the same speed in circular path, there will be acceleration. And what is the reason? Because at every instant in circular motion, direction of motion changes, due to which velocity changes, and due to which acceleration is being produced. Now there are two examples in our daily life in which we will discuss what kind of forces are acting on the body. Let's suppose if we are considering the sun, and around the sun we are considering the earth. So this is the earth, this is the sun. So what will be the direction of force acting on the earth? Since force is revolving in circular path, so definitely it will be from the center of earth towards the center of sun. Since there is a force between these two planets which is called as gravitational force, so in circular path, what kind of force exists between these two planets? Gravitational forces. We will consider another example, and that is nucleus and around nucleus we are considering electrons. This was nucleus. So in which path electrons revolve around the nucleus? In circular path, and definitely its direction of force will be like this. And since these are the charges, so what kind of forces exist between these two charged body? That is electrostatic forces. So in planets gravitational forces exist which is responsible for the circular motion, and in charged bodies electrostatic force is responsible for their circular motion. So I hope that now you will be able to cover all the questions with respect to unit number 3, that is dynamics. And if there are any questions regarding this unit, you are most welcome to write those questions or your queries in comments, and I will respond. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.